Well, thank you very much, and I do want to thank the Port of Sydney and the Harbor Development Group for what is really an honor to come here as a keynote speaker. That stevedoring experience, I just made that up. I didn't really do that. No, I did. It's important to note that the opinions I have are my opinions, and they're not necessarily those of the port or the sponsors, as they used to say. I'm not a particularly gifted public speaker, as I will clearly demonstrate. I am quite sure, and there is some cruelty to one of my orations when you're trying to eat. So hopefully that will all work out. I did start in the Los Angeles Long Beach Harbor about 35 years ago. We worked ro-ro ships, which are roll-on, roll-off ships. They have big ramps, and did that as a contract stevedore. Did break bulk, did steel, beams, and pipes, and nails, and rebar, and coils, and just about everything you can think of. Contract stevedores then worked where you were told to work when the ship came in. So it was kind of a tough life because, as we all know, in any harbor, the Thursday ship can often become the Friday ship and such. So it was somewhat difficult. Stevedores back then used to load trains as well as work the vessels. It was the Japanese automobiles would come in on ro-ro ships. We would discharge them, and there were a series of rail cars that brought Fords and Chryslers and GM into Southern California, and we'd load them back with import automobiles. So we used to load Datsuns on Southern Pacific Line many, many years ago, because there is no longer a Datsun and there's no longer a Southern Pacific Line, but yet here I am. That rail experience led to a reputation in that harbor area as a trained person, and led to a terrific opportunity for me to work for Maersk Pacific Limited in the development of their Pier J operation in Long Beach, which was the largest marine operation the largest shipping company had in this hemisphere at the time. When people first spoke to me about Sydney as a concept, as an idea, I was the person who said, it's not a concept, it's not an idea, it's something we've done before. We, meaning our industry, has certainly done this before. Pier J at Maersk Line was built with an on-dock rail operation far beyond anything that had been seen before. We used to have 10 railroad tracks within the terminal, and we could have 7,000 feet of train at the time. And the idea was that the vision and the focus of that operation was to handle higher volumes by developing a new, effective, and efficient means of moving that cargo. And it was the mission, virtually, of everyone in that terminal to say, we're going to make this train a success. Maersk had that foresight. Maersk was developing that before the larger vessels came. The larger vessel, which was an M class then, came, and it was something that was very effectively handled. So when an opportunity came, just as it came, as Marlene said, I had a chance to go to CMA CGM, where I spent the last 8-9 years of my career, and we developed a very good relationship with Canadian National Railroad from Vancouver to have cross-border traffic into the U.S. And I got to a point where last January, 45% of the traffic CMA CGM brought into Vancouver actually went to Chicago or Detroit or Memphis or the U.S. Destinations. The exact same thing will happen here. No one in this room can convince me that it won't happen here. As she said, about 2 years ago, I first saw this Novaport, and I thought it was such a fantastic idea. When I looked back at my experience and the operational issues that I've faced, and I looked at all the solutions that are offered here. I mean, I'm a simple man, but it was truly exciting. It's an exciting idea, and it's an idea, as was alluded to in earlier conversations, This industry will insist on it. This industry will not allow larger vessels not to have means of effective and efficient movement of cargo. There is no two ways about it. What this group is deciding here, and I pray in a most positive way, is are we going to do it here? Because other people are out there. Other people are out there saying, I can build a mega ship terminal. I can do that. Wilmington, North Carolina wants to do it. Tampa Bay, Florida, for God's sakes. Okay, all these people are interested in building mega terminals and trying to find a way to accommodate that vessel. The ones that say you can't do it because it's too far away, I will tell you from a career of experience, distance is something that in intermodal shipments, distance is something you can overcome. Distance is an additional 180 or 200 miles or something. Is really, it's been proven time and time again. If you look at the industry as a whole, that's the easiest thing to overcome. I can't overcome congestion. I can't overcome infrastructure restrictions, but distance is something I can cope with. Just to go back to Los Angeles for a moment, it was a very, very clear indication that any change, any revision in our supply chain at one end affects the entire supply chain. And when Maersk developed that on-dock rail at such a successful level, and successful back then was we used to do 3 trains a week. We did one to Dallas, one to Columbus, one to Chicago. And we did 150 units on a train. And we thought we were big-time railroad people. Let me tell you, we were it. You know, we literally smoked cigars. We thought we were such a railroad people there. You know, for 3 trains a week in, 3 trains a week out. Well, what a big deal. The amount of visitors that you will get here will surprise you, because Maersk got every major shipper, every major shipping line, every major port came to review that operation and emulate it. So when Pier J opened, it was the second on-dock rail. K-Line was K-Line was a little tiny, you know. But today there are 14 of them. There are 14 on-dock rails in Southern California. Every one of them bigger than Pier J was. And it wasn't because of any factor other than the industry insisted. Just as the industry will insist that the megaship find an effective home. And I can't think of one that is any better than here. Thank you. This is that not gifted part. This is actually an ideal location. That plan you saw earlier is stimulating. This is an ideal location for that development. And this is the perfect time to do it. This is the perfect time to do it. Okay? And this is the best developmental group I've ever been around in my entire career. Now we've looked at this. Thank you. We looked at this in various capacities I've had before, looking at developing new terminals, but nothing works as well as having an effective group behind it that understands the needs of the shipper and understands, again, the change in the supply chain goes all the way through to the end user. The beneficial cargo owner, the person that is going to receive that cargo, is the person that has to be your focus. He has to be your attention. Canadian Tire is not a customer of Med Shipping or a customer of CMA. Canadian Tire is a customer of every person in this room. Every person in this room that benefits from this harbor operation will benefit from Canadian Tire shipments or Walmart shipments. And it's a tremendous opportunity for us. So why is this location so good? I'm sorry, but anyway. Earlier it was discussed that we could do transshipments here. Well, ocean shippers have wanted to do effective transshipments on a major marine terminal since I think Ferdinand Magellan or something. Okay, we've been wanting to do it for a long, long time. And the reason for that is that it allows you to purify the cargo somewhat. So the cargo aboard a vessel in any given hatch doesn't have a mixture of rail and local and such. When you do it at an island, when you do it in Kingston, Jamaica, or something, you can't really extract cargo from it. You don't deliver much in Kingston. But you have that ability here. You have the ability to extract all the rail cargo from any given vessel, forward the rail cargo to the major eastern Canada cities, and also the U.S. Midwest. And it's positively exciting. I could see a situation, depending on how the processes work out, where you discharge a vessel at one end of the dock, go down to the other end of the dock and put it immediately aboard a ship. And if the terminal operators on the eastern seaboard today are at a point of congestion that is so severe, there are a lot of downstream effects that happen because of that. I was reading on one of the websites, the FMC website, because I have no life, so I do. But the FMC, the Federal Maritime Commission of the United States government, is going to look into marine terminal congestion and come up with a study group to see what they can do about it. So if things can't get any worse, we'll get the U.S. government involved in this, because they usually have a great solution to most of our problems. But let me just tell you from a shipper's point of view, the downstream effect of that is that, as I say, a vessel comes in, it has mixed cargo aboard it, and goes to one area of a terminal. Now I've got rail cargo there, I've got local delivery cargo there. The trucker for the local delivery is competing with the trucker that needs to move it to the rail. And it creates such a congestion factor that the downstream effect is the truck driver, the actual drayman, the owner-operator or independent businessman that's running that truck, used to do 3 container moves a day, 4 container moves a day. Today he's doing 1. And he's coming to the shippers, the ocean shippers, and saying, okay, I need double my rate. I need double my rate plus $100 for fuel. And that's kind of the downstream effect of this congestion. And this is not going to improve in any great time in the future. When you look at some of the proposals for how to handle more volumes, or how to handle bigger ships, I saw where New York is going to spend $1 billion to raise a bridge so a ship can come in. I almost cried. I really did. The problem is not that the ship can't fit in there. The problem is the cargo can't fit on the infrastructure inland. And that's where the delay factors come in. I've seen the transportation time between eastern seaboard cities and Midwest U.S. cities double and triple in some cases. It used to be 5 days, New York to Chicago. Now it's 12. And it's not going to get any bigger when you bring a bigger ship in there. It's probably going to get considerably worse. And the same thing is true on the West Coast. When I speak of traffic, I think for Sydney, I think of traffic from the West Coast as well. Recent problems out there have resulted in quite a bit of what used to be West Coast traffic being routed to the East Coast, as was discussed earlier. And I think there's a potential to take a lot more. Sydney is not only just the ideal location for the ocean routing, it's really a good one now because it's Southeast Asia. You can do South China, you can do Southeast Asia, which is really the big growth area right now. You can do India, you can go through the Suez, you can transload in Malta, you can transship out of Algeciras and come straight across and hit Sydney. But the real factor that's here is you have this rail line. You have the CN rail line, the Halifax to Montreal to Chicago to Memphis rail line this year, that's not at capacity right now. And I probably should have done a PowerPoint or something. I could put a map up here of North America, and I would ask somebody to point to another place where that's true. Well, Miami, Florida has Florida East Coast, which is not very congested, but Miami to Chicago is a little bit of a stretch as far as ocean shippers would be concerned. But you look at the traffic that we have routed lately, and again, distance is something that is hardly considered. Why did they build a Prince Rupert? Because they had a railroad line. Why are they building Larzo Cardenas in Mexico? Because they have a railroad line. No one is building railroads. And that's going to be a restrictive condition. I heard for 8 or 10 years. I would disagree with that. It's going to be that way for decades until we find a new means of conveyance. And that's what they offer here in Sydney. It's almost everything you could ask for. Now, as if that isn't good enough, we're going to have a transloading logistics yard here. We're going to have it here instead of at the inland location. And you look at major logistics park, be it Calgary or be it Joliet, Illinois, or North Baltimore, or any of those places. So it's clear, that intermodal means conveyance by more than one means. This stuff gets put on a rail in Eastern City. It's sent to Chicago. It arrives at the rail terminal. The least reliable way of transporting cargo, which is the local trucker. Okay, he's going to go with the highest paying traffic, or he doesn't want to work if it's snowing or it's raining or whatever the condition is. He's going to move it from that rail ramp to the distribution center, to the logistics park. It's going to be emptied there, and now I have an empty container I have to move. Okay, and then after it's been transloaded and sorted, and then it's delivered to the beneficial cargo owner. So again, there's a system in the supply chain that affects the end user, and the beneficial cargo owner is the person that's most affected. If you can do it on a marine terminal, and this would be the 4th or 5th group I've been with that have looked at that. We looked at it in LA, we looked at it in Newark of all places, but it always comes down to the same, that there's 2 truck moves that are there. Something has to take the container over, something has to bring the container back. So if you have a means of transloading at this facility, so you can go to especially people that are sensitive to segregation, and those are auto dealers like General Motors and Ford, your Canadian Tires, again, your Walmarts. And you can tell them, I will ship that to Memphis, Tennessee on the CN system. We'll control it the entire time. And I'll deliver it directly to your door. These people take you out to dinner. I mean it. It's just a fantastic innovation. So when we look back as ocean shippers and all the suffering we've had, we say, gee, I wish there was a way we could transship. And they can do it here. And we wish there was a way to transload close to this marine terminal. And as very accurately indicated earlier, marine terminals are somewhat landlocked. They have to expand, you have to tear down houses and churches and move cemeteries, and people get sensitive about that sort of stuff. But here, look what you have here. This is like heaven, This is an ideal location. Okay, so when I think of that, I will stand up with anybody and say, where else would you build it? You want to build it in Coos Bay? Please. That's not going to be the answer. The answer is going to be, we need to take the volume out of the system. We need to find an effective means of moving this cargo, and we need to be ready when they open the gate here. We need to be ready when that first ship pulls up and say, we're going to transload this, we're going to put this on the rail, we're going to handle the rest of it. And to me, it's a very exciting proposition. One other thing, because my experience with vessels is, and this is what will be a major restriction, again, on Eastern Seaboard. When bigger ships come in, it's not a matter of there's 30% more volume or there's 40% more volume, so I need 40% more men or I need 40% more resources. There's a time compression that happens. Okay? No one has a berth that a ship can sit at for a week. And a mega ship or ultra-large container vessel, as they're called here, that ship has to move. That ship has to go. The economy of that vessel is based upon movement. It's not based upon total cargo movement, the daily operating cost is 1/3 less than a bigger ship, but it's only 1/3 less if it's moving. So we need to have a mega ship that comes to Novaport. It's got to be out of here. It can't even be here 4 days. 4 days would be the maximum. We need to move it in 3.5 days. And of all the things we can discuss with ocean shippers, as far as why should you come to Novaport, why should you come to Sydney, a plan for that, an effective plan for that would be a huge selling point for them. The operating cost of that vessel, we've got to have it going. It's got to come in 4 days later, it's loaded up and it's gone. So, it's a little tangent I got off on there. So that's why I can't imagine a more ideal place than you have right here in Sydney. It's the perfect time. It's like a dream. It was discussed earlier that these mega ships are being built, and I think in this industry, the people that are the most successful are the people that are living 5 years in the future or something. I was in the Netherlands, and I went to The Hague for a meeting with a major operating group out of Denmark, and in their development group and in their planning group, you walked around. This was a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago. They have calendars for 2020. Okay, not only do they have calendars, they have stuff written on there. It's in Danish, so I don't know what the hell it was, but it's like Port Said something or other, and that's the way we have to look. And it's very, very true, as again was discussed earlier. Where are we going to be with these mega ships in 5 years? Who is going to be able to handle them? The East Coast ports are talking about additions and annexes and more cranes and all these sort of things that they can do, but sooner or later you run down to the infrastructure restriction, and that's a huge, huge point in your timeline. It's not that there's only a single track that runs between New York and Cleveland, or Norfolk and Chicago. It's that the trains that are on those tracks, the intermodal trains, compete with other commodities, and it happens in Canada and it happens in the U.S. Oil trains a year and a half ago, my God, you couldn't move an intermodal train because of oil. My Pacific Northwest traffic doubled. It's like 2.5 times the transit time. And the railroads are very unapologetic about that. It's more profitable to run oil trains. But we went from, in the U.S., what I track, we went from running like 31 oil trains a week to running almost 180 oil trains a week because it was more profitable to do. Now, I see oil's back at $50 a barrel. Will that stimulate more oil trains? Yes, it will. But you don't just, on this single track, it's not just all intermodal. We have to make room for oil trains and finished products, and we have to make room for boxcars, we have to make room for automobiles. So any industry that surges actually affects intermodal products in one way or another. It's the principle I said, the supply chain affects all the way down. Anything that happens revises this all the way down. In Canada, I think it was last year, the government got, and government's involvement is something we all want. The government got involved because of grain. They had a great bumper crop the year before, and it was sitting in the silos because the railroads weren't moving it. And they weren't moving it because they were moving oil trains, they were moving intermodal trains and other trains. Grain's not a very high profit item for a railroad. So the government got involved, and somebody knows better, they can correct me, but they told Canadian Pacific and Canadian National, you're going to move 535,000 tons a month until we empty these silos and storage areas out, so we have room for the new harvest. And when that happened, I received a phone call that said, by the way, your Vancouver traffic should be delayed another 3 or 4 days. And now I will get off on a tangent. So why is that a huge concern if it's just arriving late and maybe you can make adaptations for it? Well, containerized cargo is basically two things. It's either supplemental, which is like your shirts and your sweaters and pencils and things like that, or seasonal. It's for back to school, it's for Christmas, it's for all of this. So when a shipper gets to a point where his transit's unreliable, where his transit can't be, you can't count on that 5-day transit anymore, they ship earlier. And they ship earlier, and it has an effect through the entire supply chain again, because now your Christmas product that used to come in last week in October, first week in November, is suddenly showing up the first week in October, because the customer, the end user on that supply chain, is quite concerned that it won't make it there. If it makes it, it sits in a warehouse, or it sits in a container. And it has that effect on the entire system. So now containers are more restricted in usage because they're being used for storage, or warehouse space becomes a premium for us. And all of this is for one reason, which is we cannot rely on this infrastructure. So where can I find a railroad? Where can I find one that doesn't have a capacity issue and doesn't have it's a good robust system, I'm not knocking it, but doesn't have that competitive, condition with other commodities. You know where? It's Halifax. It's that line that runs from Halifax to Montreal, Toronto, down to Chicago, goes through Detroit, all your auto goods, goes to Chicago, goes down to Memphis, can interchange to eastern carriers or western carriers in the U.S. But other than this line, because this is the last line, anyone else, and God bless Tampa Bay, okay, but when you come off that train in Tampa Bay, you're still going to hit that CSX system. When you come off that train in Coos Bay, you're still on Union Pacific, and you have the one track. And although we have one track here, that's very true, but I'm not competing. I'm not going up against other commodities. And so this is the perfect time for this facility. If we could have this facility open in 3.5 years, I know that a speaker earlier talked about we need to get a major shipping line. I think they'd be fighting for the place. CMA, my old company, tried a couple of mega ships on the West Coast. I think if you read all these blogs and these internet sites that we all read, and they said, no, that's it, we can't do it. Why couldn't they do it? Well, they couldn't do it because they couldn't move it, There's a great dichotomy, a great division in ocean shipping, You have these people over here, that, and a lot of them are port groups. Not this one, but a lot of them are port groups that say, we'll bring the bigger ship in, we'll raise a bridge or something, and then we'll have the cranes, we'll have 8 cranes, we'll throw it on a dock. There you go. Well, okay, now what do we do with it? Well, this is my group over here, right? We're the ones that have to try to find a way to move this. And if you don't, the congestion gets even worse. If the second ship shows up and half the first ship is still there, which is exactly the case today, it becomes a matter of exactly what CMA went through. They brought 3 big ships into Los Angeles Harbor and said, well, this just isn't working. And every time these ships are introduced, too, it's like a self-inflicted wound here. You bring in a 18,000 TEU ship. It displaces 2 6,000s, let's say, and they displace 2 4s and 2s, and it cascades down. So you bring in an 18,000 and you create a capacity surplus, but it's not just on that line. And there have been some very clear cases where the vessels are reassigned to other non-profitable services. And so you create excess capacity with the giant mega ship, you create excess capacity in almost all your routes, which is okay if your mega ship is moving. If this ship is moving in that compressed time space, the theory that we're working with, and I don't know that it's been proven, but the theory that we're working with is that the reduction of that rate will be offset by the higher number of containers you can move on any given vessel. I don't know that's been proven yet. I honestly believe that Novaport will set a new standard. Novaport will set a new goal that every other shipping line has to reach. The shipping line that comes here will be extremely fortunate. If it's a European shipper or Oriental shipper, it's going to be extremely fortunate, because you have a terrific route on the water that I talked to, but you have a terrific inland route. You have a great rail route, which no one else has. And this is the last one. This is the last good one. The last one exists here. So we need to build this in Nova Scotia. We really do. We need to build this in the U.S. I'm kind of an example of that. You don't have to be smart to be in this business, but you have to watch what smart people do. You have to pay attention to what people that are really experienced and really good do. And one of the better groups, and I haven't met any of them, so I hope they're not here today, is CN Railroad. CN Railroad will be a major reason that Novaport is so successful. They're very innovative. They have the ability to think like an ocean shipper, and they have the ability to think like a terminal operator. And no other railroad I've ever dealt with does that anywhere near as well as CN does. So there's a couple of circumstances that will affect Novaport, and following the CN example, because we'll be using CN here, will be a real benefit to this entire operation. They built a system in Vancouver where the status of containers on a terminal was something that they could share with the terminal operator themselves. It used to be one of the real fun things we did when we worked in intermodal was we'd get a phone call from this end user, the beneficial cargo owner, and he'd say, hey, jackass, my container's still sitting in Vancouver. Why is that? And we'd contact the terminal, and the terminal would say, oh, okay, I'll move it tomorrow. And no way, that container's moving. So we'd call back the next day, and then we could start the fun, because the terminal operator would say it's the railroad, and then the railroad would say, well, it's the terminal operator, but meanwhile, the end user's not getting his product. This new system they have, they both have visibility to it, so they both know how many containers are there and how many containers are dwelling. It's kind of, it's green, has all these green containers on there, they're ready to go, and then, they're getting yellow, and then they turn red. It's almost Christmassy, And then after a while, they flash. Really high-tech stuff there. But the example is that CN understood what I needed. I was an ocean shipper. They understood that I needed that. So when I got a call from that end user again, when I got a call from him, I'd say, yes, we know about that. Yes, the terminal knows about that. Yes, the railroad knows about that. And that's the same system we'll have here. And that control of that container is critical for the logistics park. Because the real downfall to inland transportation to Memphis or Chicago or even Montreal is that we can't, as ocean, we can't control that box. In that the trucker's going to show up for it and take it, and when would he deliver it, and how would he deliver it, and when will it be ready, are all things that are difficult to control. But here at Novaport, we can literally say, tomorrow we're going to do this 100, or we're going to do these 200. And it's, all that information can be processed to the beneficial cargo owner. And a Canadian Tire's got 10 different containers they want transloaded. So they go to Montreal, they spend 20 truck trips because they got to take it there, take it back, then deliver it, okay? Or we'll do it here. We'll do it here for you. And there's a huge value to that. There's absolutely tremendous value to that. So I think you're this is an ideal place. I don't know of a better place. I'm not here for any other reason than I'm kind of a fan of the place. And this is the perfect time. We got to do this like in the next 6 months at the latest, okay? I want to be ready when these ships are begging for a place to go, when they've hit Norfolk and they're too congested, when they've hit Savannah, of all places, okay, and they can't process the loads, okay, they're going to be looking for a place to go, and we're going to say, pull it up here, pal. We'll transload it for you. We'll transship it for you. We'll deliver it by rail for you. It's a tremendous opportunity. And then one other thing there, as we market this, I said we, as you guys market this, you're going to find some hesitation among clients, international clients, because there's all these horror stories about cross-border shipments. Oh my God, in heaven, it takes, customs stops the entire train, and they sit there for 2 weeks before they come, they hear all this stuff. And again, because they're not here, so I can talk nice about them. CN developed a system where it used to be in the old days that you had a container that customs wanted to look at, and not necessarily for a bad reason. It was a new shipper or a new product they hadn't seen, or they had trouble with the shipper before, or more likely than not, he owed money on a fine, so they weren't letting his cargo come in. We used to stop the train and we'd cut out the rail car, we hooked the train back together, and away it would go. Well, now I've got this rail car on a siding, customs inspects the container they want and either keep it or send it back. You got this whole rail car to move, see, and there's 10 containers on there. The other 9 guys, they're just delayed, I'm sorry. And it would take at least a day, maybe 2, 3, 4 days before we could find a train to hook it up to. If it's a rail car for Memphis or something, we had to wait for a Memphis train. So CN developed this system where there's a siding just before it comes to the U.S., and the train loops out like this, and there's a crane sitting. This is a crane. There's a crane sitting there. And if the train goes by, it can reach down, pick off any container you want, put it on the ground, and the train keeps going. The last delay that I was involved with was 28 minutes, because CN is that good. And the last thing I'll say positive about CN today, there's no one better at developing export products or export customers than Canadian National. Canadian National does a lot of domestic moves with empty containers, but they are really good at exports. They have developed a couple of really systems that revolutionized or changed at least the shipments of export products, in particular grain. You can load grain containers on the Canadian National Terminal in Harvey. So instead of being restricted by weights over the road shipments and stuff like that, it used to be 42 tons. In Harvey, you could load 48 tons of grain. As I say, grain doesn't pay very much. But for ocean shippers, we want grain rather than an empty container. So I just said that because someone said they didn't like grain too much. But grain is a great export product, and there's no one better than CN. CN will make customer calls with you and go over transit time and go over all the products you have, and CN would absolutely love to have more export products coming up from Montreal, Toronto to the Halifax, Nova Scotia region. Right now it's pretty much imports. Imports come to that region and they come down the rail, but there's very little that goes up there. So it's a good balancing system for them. They really, they would really be good at that. And finally, mercifully, this group, this developmental group, is truly like no group I've ever worked with. And I tried to come up with a phrase. Are you going to give me a sign that says 2 minutes or something? Okay. All right. They're like no group that I've worked with. We have these meetings, we get these conference calls going, and the best way I think I could say it is that anyone's concern is everyone's concern. And it's refreshing that no one is, I do terminals, I do trains, I'm only here for the system. That's not true with this group. This group is really a group of people that are concerned with everyone's issues and anything that's going to affect that end user. So what can the vessel person do to help the train, and what can the train do to help the vessel person is the subject of conversation. But before that, and this is probably the most refreshing thing, is before that, before the cost issues come up or production issues come up or efficiency issues come up, there's this in-depth study about safety. This terminal has to be safe. You have to avoid any chance for injury. I am sorry to say from personal experience, I can tell you this is a dangerous business. This is a deadly business. It does not tolerate fools. And it does not tolerate foolish behaviors. So we need to find the absolute best and safest practice that we can at this terminal. It's a terrible thing to go at home at night if you've been running an operation and someone's been hurt. It's a terrible, terrible thing. Okay, so what can we do? Well, safety is going to be mandated. Safety is no exception. Safety has got to be our primary goal. Has to be. No, nothing will affect this terminal more than safety. This is an unsafe place to work, and injuries are prevalent, then this terminal will never be successful. It was discussed by a couple of people here, but this place is beautiful. It's my first time up here. The city is a lovely little city, and we have to keep it that way. We have to make sure environmentally that we are not hurting the environment. We want to try to enhance the environment. Okay, so the other thing about this Harbor Development Group is they know the expertise they need. They know it. We need to have low sulfur fuel. We need to do that cold ironing. That's what they call it when they turn off the ship and put in land power and all that. We need to have electrical components anywhere we can other than diesel. Okay? We know all of that. Okay? We know the expertise we're going to need for marine terminals. Okay? Someone told me one time, how hard can it be? They're all boxes, right? But we need to have crane experts. We need to have crane maintenance people. We need to have all that. So you have to be safe. There's no other way to do it. You have to be environmentally, hopefully enhancing. Maybe with reclamation projects we can do here that will do that. We got to put up sound abatement. The sound of trains. I personally like it, but a lot of people don't. So we have to make sure that we have sound abatement here so the community is supporting us and realizes that those type of efforts are going to be made to ensure the quality of life here. It's very, very important. So when we get done with that, we'll put in a rail yard here that's beyond the scope of any rail operation, I think I can say in the world. We'll put in a rail yard here that will be as good as anything on any railroad system in North America. The trains that come out of here will be as effective, and all the metrics will be there. It'll be weight balanced. We know all that. There's a dynamic to braking on trains. You got to have the weight distributed in a certain way to make sure that trains are braking correctly. And all of that's going to happen here. And again, we know the expertise that's needed. So where's this expertise going to come from? Well, actually things are going our way a little bit because there's been major consolidation of a couple of Chinese shipping lines. And my old friends at CMA are in the process of acquiring APL. That's going to make people available, good people available. I can think of 4 or 5 I'd like to bring here now. But we don't want Americans running this place. But we want them up here training us, and we want them to show us the best way to do it, and the safest way to do it, and the most environmentally neutral way to do this. And those people are going to be available. I can say I don't know if they're moved to Sydney, but you don't want them here anyway, really. But we certainly can bring them up here and use that expertise, which I think is going to be available on the market. Along with this need for expertise and the understanding for expertise, there comes a certain degree of inherent cost concern. And cost concern will be a big thing to ocean shippers. Because sooner or later I have to get around to cost, right? Well, it's important that we don't focus on a rate. A lot of people say, well, if I could get a stevedoring rate of this much money, or I could get a rail rate of that much money, I could make it competitive up here. You have to look at, in my opinion again, you have to look at the overall cost. You have to look at what does it cost from the time that ship shows up to the time that cargo is delivered to Canadian Tire. And that's the analysis we need. We need to say, what can we do to reduce that cost? Okay? It's very easy to say technology will cut labor. Okay? Technology, well, we'll just do away with this drivers and that drivers and all this. But you talk about the need for expertise. 50 times in my career, I was screwed up on a ship or train or something, you know. And the expert that helped me was the longshoreman, you know. I'd only seen this break bulk condition 4 times. He's seen it 100, you know. So he why don't you do this, or why don't you do this? And almost invariably he was right, okay. So it's not just a matter of we're going to introduce technology and the technology is going to cut the cost. Well, certainly it will. Certainly it will. And I'm hoping that all the unions involved here can embrace an opportunity like this and say the actual employment opportunities are going to be much higher. You're going to have more crane gangs. You're going to have a rail operation like you can't believe. You're going to have a transloading. You're going to have transshipping. These are all employment opportunities that are going to be here in Sydney. And I believe that. They are going to be here in Sydney. But there's all types of other ways that we can look at, go to the actual experts themselves, go to the tugs, go to the pilots, go to the bunkering companies, go to the husbanding agents, and say, what can I do to be smarter that would reduce both of our costs? Because we need to do that to be competitive. You're going to benefit from this. So I need your expertise to cut this. We need to go to the railroad and say, how do you want that train? How do you want that train built? Do you want CN cars for the CN system, TTX cars for interchange? I want it blocked a certain fashion. I want it delivered at a certain time because I'm going to have power available, whatever it takes. That's going to be the challenge for us here. For all of us to say we're going to embrace this concept, we understand it is historic. It will set a standard in Sydney that other people will have to emulate. When this place opens up, and I'm going to be very hopeful it's going to be the first one, by the time this door opens here, there'll be 4 other projects just like it in various places in North America, because they're going to have to. And other terminals, you know, it was I think the Cargo Business News or something, they projected $100 billion of spending because of the wider canal, the wider ships go through the canal. $100 billion will be spent between now and 2030 to enhance terminals in the Gulf, in the southeast United States to handle all this traffic. Well, that's great. That's good. I hope Mobile is successful. And again, that's the group that kind of lives over here. They're going to bring that bigger ship in from the Panama Canal. They're going to throw all this stuff on the dock, but it's still going to hit that train. It's still going to hit that train track. It's still going to compete with that commodity. No one's building a railroad, and that's not going to get any better. So, as I say, this is going to be built. The industry is going to insist on it. Tens of billions of dollars are invested in these mega ships. And the charters on these ships, like 25 years, is not even excessive. So the industry's got the money invested in this, and they're going to turn around to the terminals, as they always do. Ports compete with each other and say, who can handle this? Who's got the best solution to this? And the best solution is going to be here in Sydney. And I sincerely believe that. Okay, so it's up to us to decide. We put it here, we could put it in Wilmington, North Carolina, we could put it in Coos Bay, okay, or we can be the first ones. We can be the ones that set the standard here. And I don't know that anyone can build anything that's going to come anywhere close to this. So I guess that's about all the rambling I can do right here. If anyone has any questions about that, I'd be glad to. I don't know how you could, but if you did have a question about it, I would be glad to answer it. Okay? You guys got to see this. You guys got to believe this, because honestly, this is going to be historic. You'll set a standard here that will be emulated and copied everywhere in North America, and you'll do it right here in Sydney. Okay? Thank you.